Part 81. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 805. The lightning storm came to an end, but after this powerful destructive force raged, the entire base was in a state of confusion that could not be calmed down in an instant. Looking around, there are ruins almost everywhere in the base, too many buildings have been destroyed, and infantry tanks have suffered large casualties. Everywhere is dilapidated and miserable, and there is a lifeless atmosphere. Rush. However, the horror of super weapons is not just the direct destruction. After using lightning storm to destroy the base to the point of breaking out, the group of Allied troops outside that were originally surrounded and refused to attack, also took advantage of this moment to launch a general offensive, as if they would take advantage of your illness to kill you. In the past, this kind of practice was imposed on Yuri base by Wang Ling, but things have changed, and now it is Wang Ling's turn to try this. In the electronic video, dozens of rocket pilots rushed in at the front, followed by multi-purpose infantry vehicles, phantom tanks, remote control tanks and grizzly tanks, as well as light tanks and infantry troops in the rear, bright blue. One piece, particularly penetrating. Seeing this posture, the base commander panicked. It's over, lightning storm on the front foot, and another general attack on the back foot. We can't stop it. It's all over now. Your mother-in-law. However, Wang Ling started to curse, glared at the commander fiercely, and vowed, as long as I'm here, the base can't be finished. The Allies really made me angry this time, just wait for me. After saying that, Wang Ling turned around and walked out of the command post angrily. The commander was also a little confused and quickly looked at Yuri X. Yuri, leave the command of the troops to him and let's watch the show together. Although lightning storm caused a lot of trouble for the base, it also successfully provoked Wang Ling. I am very much looking forward to what Wang Ling will do. Good. There was still some distrust of Wang Ling, but for Yuri place. Choo choo choo. Choo choo choo. Da da da. Da da da. The Allied forces' general attack was very fast. When Wang Ling left the command post, the group of rocket pilots had already exchanged fire with the Getter cannon in the base. Under normal circumstances, a Getter cannon can easily shoot down more than 10 rocket pilots. Even dozens of rocket pilots can resist for a while and shoot down many. But now, the Getter cannon was struck by a bolt of lightning in the lightning storm, nearly half of its health was lost, and now more than 40 rocket pilots were charging together. In the end, they were unable to resist for long and were just killed. 5 or 6 rocket pilots were exploded by it. Afterwards, a group of rocket pilots quickly moved to fight the next Getter cannon, which was still alive. However, there were 2 tank bunkers with remaining health around the Getter cannon, and the 2 Getter tanks inside also fought back to fight against these rocket pilots. Overall, the battle between the two sides maintained the same level of firepower. However, after all, due to the lightning storm, Yuri's base was still at a disadvantage. Not long after the exchange of fire, the Getter cannon was blown up again, and a group of rocket pilots continued to fight against 2 tank bunkers. But at this time, dong 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 dong. Dong 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 dong. However, Wang Ling arrived in time and immediately transformed into a king-level anti-aircraft infantry. He picked up the barrel and fired. His anti-aircraft firepower was several times stronger than the 2 Getter tanks combined. As a result, relying on the tank bunker to attract firepower, he started to fight back crazily. Under his powerful firepower, these rocket pilots fell down in pieces, and were wiped out in a matter of seconds. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Boom boom boom. However, this was far from over. After shooting down these air forces, Wang Ling immediately transformed into a king-level elite combat soldier. Under a round of strafing, all the multifunctional infantry vehicles that broke into the base exploded, including those at the rear. The large number of phantom tanks that followed were also affected and were bombed on the way in. All remaining troops, listen to my order, immediately set up a defense line and move forward. Laser UFO, blow up the prism tank for me. After killing these Allied vanguards, Wang Ling immediately issued a series of orders. This group of Yuri troops had received orders from the commander. At this critical moment, no one disobeyed the order. They quickly recovered from the residual power of the super weapon, organized together, and came forward as Wang Ling said. After the baptism of the lightning storm, the number of infantry tanks that survived in the base was only about 60% of the previous number. The number dropped sharply, and those that survived had many injuries of varying degrees. However, this did not affect the battle. After all, Wang Ling did not expect them to exert much force. As long as they exerted their momentum and attracted some firepower, that was enough. The rest depends on Wang Ling's own terrifying output. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Just as this group of Yuri troops were setting up defenses, the Allied armored troops were approaching. Wang Ling was not polite and picked up his rifle to fight. The intensity of his firepower was abnormal. Under his strafing, the number of these Grizzly tanks was rapidly shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. Each Grizzly tank could not withstand Wang Ling's fire for even 1 second. Shooting, this firepower is simply outrageous. The remote-controlled tank couldn't resist his strafing fire, and it would die if it touched it. The explosions were connected together as if they formed a symphony from hell. The other infantrymen were originally frightened, but after watching Wang Ling's battle, they all became excited again. As if they had been given a shot of blood, they quickly deployed their defenses and stood at the forefront to fight against the Allied forces rushing forward. The tanks battled together. Although the Allied troops were superior in number and fierce, they did not take any advantage in the battle with Wang Ling. The large number of tanks could not break through the blockade of Yuri's troops in the front, and they were shot by Wang Ling in the rear. Gradually defeated, with a rate of fire as fast as a Gatling gun, there was no pause in the crazy strafing, and strong output was maintained at all times. A large number of Grizzly tanks and remote-controlled tanks were damaged and exploded one after another. These tanks were wiped out not long after the war. Behind them were a large number of infantry teams and light tanks, but when they failed to break into the circle of fire, more than 20 laser UFOs came from the sky. They ignored the infantry and instead focused their fire to bombard those light tanks. Edge tank. The Prism tank's attack performance is very high, but it has no anti-aircraft capabilities. It can only take a beating under the bombardment of the laser UFO. Moreover, its armor and life are extremely low, and it cannot withstand the damage at all. As a result, there are 15 or 6 Prism tanks. But failed to emit a single ray of light, so they were all exploded midway. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 806. It seems that relying on the early destruction of the lightning storm, the offensive troops of the two Allied bases lost all their usual caution when launching the general attack, as if they had expected that the Yuri base no longer had too much resistance. Indeed, according to past combat habits, Yuri base is indeed very dangerous at this time. After all, after the end of the super weapon, even the commander was disheartened. However, Wang Ling is the biggest variable. Why were the Allied forces so afraid of him that they even wanted to set up Wang Ling during the alliance, even if they didn't hesitate to offend the Allied forces? Not only were they worried about his fighting power, but one person had enough firepower to turn the tide, which really made them feel uneasy. Including this time, the lightning storm was immediately ready and released, with the intention of killing Wang Ling and solving this serious problem. But God is not as good as man. Not only did the lightning storm fail to deal with Wang Ling, it even angered him, allowing him to almost single-handedly turn the tide of the war and disrupt the fierce offensives of the two Allied bases. Boom! As the last light tank exploded, All the tanks and vehicles of the Allied offensive force were destroyed, leaving only nearly 400 infantry troops. Come. No one is left, kill them all. When it comes to attacking other bases, this large force of nearly 400 infantrymen charges together. Even if it cannot be captured, it will still cause a lot of trouble to Yuri base. However, in Wang Ling's eyes, this aggressive offensive seemed very ridiculous. Instead of having any intention of all-out defense, he ordered his troops to launch a counterattack. After seeing Wang Ling's power, the surviving Yuri troops now felt confident and rushed forward one after another to fight head-on with this large group of Allied infantry. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Wang Ling was naturally not idle either, and started to charge even as he mingled with the crowd. His shooting range was longer than that of a virus sniper. He stayed in the crowd, maintaining an absolutely safe distance, and started shooting unscrupulously. Even with the hardness of the Grizzly tank, it couldn't withstand Wang Ling's strafing fire, let alone this group of infantry. Although there were a large number, in Wang Ling's eyes, they were just living targets. Under the strafing fire, they fell in pieces. In the air, those laser UFOs were also constantly firing laser beams, harvesting the lives of the Allied infantry. There were crazy-looking Yuri troops blocking the attack in front. Coupled with Wang Ling's powerful firepower, this seemingly menacing Allied force, the large infantry force of the army, decreased sharply at an extremely exaggerated speed, and was completely wiped out after a short period of time. Hee hee, your mother-in-law, you still want to use super weapons to destroy us? No way. Ha ha ha, I thought I was going to die, but I miraculously survived. These damn allies deserve to be wiped out. I don't have to die. Ha ha, I'm alive again. Commander Wang Ling, you are awesome. After surviving the catastrophe, the remaining Yuri infantrymen were all ecstatic now. No wonder the leader wants to control him by name. This Wang Ling is too strong. One person can easily defeat thousands of troops. Not only this group of infantry, but also the commander had goosebumps all over. This after the first battle, he fully realized how powerful Wang Ling was. However, compared with their excitement, the Allies were in a state of despair, especially the two Allied base commanders, whose eyes were almost filled with panic. Damn it! Wang Ling! He is still alive. Is this guy a monster? Not even the lightning storm can destroy him. Damn it! It's Wang Ling again. How come this guy wasn't struck to death by lightning? He'll be a disaster sooner or later if he survives, but he actually destroyed all our attacking troops. The super weapon Lightning Storm was originally released to target Wang Ling, but in the end, Wang Ling survived. If this main threat has not been killed, what's the point of destroying so many buildings and troops in Yuri's base? The two commanders were really shocked as they watched Wang Ling lead his troops and wipe out the attacking troops at the two Allied bases. Originally, when Wang Ling came to the battlefield, the coalition forces fled, and the pressure on the Allies was considerable. However, in this battle, instead of eliminating the threat, half of his own troops were involved, making the situation even more critical. For this reason, the two Allied commanders, after some annoyance and horror, hurriedly contacted General Bob and wanted to request support again. But unexpectedly, this time, no matter how they shouted, they couldn't connect to the headquarters at all. It was clear that General Bob, as commander of the Allied forces, had given up on them. Please be quiet, everyone. Are you annoyed by all the yelling? In front of Yuri base, the group of infantrymen were still shouting excitedly. When he was in the coalition army, Wang Ling was happy to hear such cheers, but now his temperament has changed drastically and he is very irritable. He actually cursed and hit him. Cut them off. Although it is said that this lightning storm came because of Wang Ling, this group of infantry did not understand this. Instead, it was because Wang Ling took the lead in blocking the attack that they were able to kill the Allied attacking troops and survive. For this reason, this group of infantry had to obey Wang Ling. No one cheered or resisted. After calming down, Wang Ling took 2 deep breaths, and then used the radio to directly contact Yuri. Good. The commander agreed almost without thinking, and then immediately contacted the commanders of the other 2 bases. After this battle, he has completely recognized Wang Ling, and even if Wang Ling uses a commanding tone towards him, he will no longer be unhappy at all. Even Yuri. The commander's work efficiency was quite good, and the news was quickly notified to the other 2 bases. The 2 commanders also watched the entire electronic video, remembered Wang Ling firmly, and cooperated very well after hearing the news. The 2 bases immediately dispatched half of their troops to assemble towards the Yuri base at the front. While these 2 groups of troops were marching, Wang Ling gave another order to the Yuri troops beside him: whether you are soldiers, tanks, vehicles, or flying saucers, all of you who are full of health, come out to me, I will take you, go take revenge. Others, who are not afraid of death and still want to fight, just follow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 807. Oh. As Wang Ling's order came down, a group of Yuri infantry immediately shouted. Although Wang Ling had turned dark, he had not forgotten his tactics of motivating the troops. In just a few words, he had mobilized the fighting spirit of these Yuri troops. At that moment, all the troops with full health stood up on their own. There were even some wounded people who joined in, cursing, "Damn it, the Allies beat us like this, and if we don't take revenge, I'll be really angry." Of course, most of the seriously injured people did not participate. They wanted to survive more than seek revenge. In this regard, Wang Ling did not make things difficult for them. After dismissing these seriously injured people, he reorganized the accompanying troops. Then there was another wait, until the troops from the other 2 bases arrived, and then they finally mobilized and led the troops towards the Allied base in a hurry. Different camps have different styles. As for the Allied forces, the 2 commanders felt uncomfortable knowing that they had been abandoned by the commander. However, one of the bases, relying on the power of the giant cannon, was still willing to resist, and stepped up the construction of the giant cannon. But the commander of another base had no intention of fighting at all. While marching, Wang Ling saw from the electronic video that a helicopter suddenly flew out of this base. The commander seemed to have abandoned him. The base and troops escaped alone. It is true that escaping from battle is disgraceful, and you will inevitably be sentenced to death if caught, but who made the commander abandon them? You can't blame me for being unkind. Haha, interesting. Since the commander ran away, let your troops take the punishment for you. Seeing this scene, Wang Ling smiled playfully, and then ordered the troops to change direction and head towards the empty nest base. There are many factors that affect the combat effectiveness of an army. In addition to basic quality, morale is also a major factor. As for this Allied base, even the commander fled. You can imagine the morale of the remaining troops. In addition, half of the combat effectiveness was lost during the previous attack. The Allied base at this time can be said to have the worst combat effectiveness. It's time, who will hit you if I don't hit you? As you can imagine, this battle went very smoothly. Under the leadership of Wang Ling, Yuri's large forces quickly visited the Allied base. They first used laser UFOs to invade and adsorb the power plants to cut off the power supply. Then the large forces charged, with Wang Ling taking the lead. Kill the Allied guards blocking the road, and finally quickly dismantle all the buildings to destroy a base. During this entire process, they did not encounter any decent obstruction, and the combat speed was extremely fast. After taking out this base, Wang Ling was not idle, and immediately sent his troops northward, eyeing the last Allied base. Compared to the previous one, this Allied base is not that easy to deal with. The commander is still holding on, and even Wang Ling has to take the threat of the giant artillery seriously. When the result was approaching, Wang Ling did not immediately lead a force to attack. Instead, he ordered dozens of laser UFOs to surround the Allied base from all directions. In order to resist the super weapons of the Mind Empire, the Allies had actually built a lot of crack generators. There were also 3 in this base, almost covering the entire base. Wang Ling could not judge this. How many cannons are there in the base now? However, the Air Force is not threatened by giant artillery. As a weapon for siege of cities and territories, these laser UFOs naturally play the role of vanguard troops, stationing themselves in the Allied base from all directions and forcibly exploring the surrounding dark areas. Swish swish swish. Swish swish swish. This base seems to attach great importance to defense. It not only has huge cannons, but also has many anti-aircraft troops and anti-aircraft missiles. As soon as the laser UFO entered the base, a large number of missiles flew around, violently bombarding the laser UFO. But after receiving Wang Ling's order, these laser UFOs had no intention of stopping the attack. Instead, they continued to go deeper and soon discovered 4 giant cannons. Good guy, giant cannons are a huge threat to Yuri's troops. You have to be careful with every one of them, but 4 of them have been built in this base. Sure enough, Wang Ling was careful and sent the laser UFO invasion in advance, thus avoiding a large number of unnecessary casualties. Now that the location of the giant cannon has been detected, and by the way, the location of the Allied guards and the power plant has also been exposed, the rest is easy to handle. Under Wang Ling's order, these laser UFOs quickly flew to the power plant. Above the factory, it adsorbed and cut off the power. Without the power supply, the air defense force in the base was suddenly reduced by half. With the remaining heavily armed soldiers and multifunctional infantry vehicles, it would be impossible to destroy all the laser UFOs in an instant. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wang Ling was planning to lead the charge, but at this moment, boom! Buzz! Among the guards at the Allied base, a mental shockwave suddenly exploded and spread, destroying a large number of buildings in the base in an instant. The dust on the ground floated up out of thin air, forming a special force in the air. The avatar there lasted for a while and then disappeared. However, in the center of the mental explosion, the original Allied troops were forcibly controlled in an instant, and they violently bombarded the surrounding Allied buildings and Allied troops. Seeing this scene, Wang Ling was a little confused for a moment. He blinked and asked from the radio, "What's going on? Who released the psychic storm? Did I say that I would provide support? In this situation, we need to use its super weapon. Isn't it? The sudden accident just now was caused by the super weapon psychic storm of the Mind Empire. Releasing super weapons before the general attack was originally a very normal strategy, but when it happened to Wang Ling, it was not necessary at all. With his combat effectiveness, leading a group of troops to storm the Allied base was simply something that could be easily accomplished. Here, isn't it a waste to release Psychic Storm? To Wang Ling's expectation, the person who answered his question was not the commander or Yuri X, but Yuri himself. With your combat power, this situation is naturally unnecessary, but we have spent a lot of effort. I have just brought you under control, but the Allies use lightning storm to get rid of you. This is something I cannot tolerate. So, as a courtesy, if the Allies give you lightning storm, I will give them psychic storm. Do you have any other questions? Emotional Yuri has always been paying attention to Wang Ling. He saw the whole process of the lightning storm, and this was the scene just now. TCH, boring. However, Wang Ling was not very grateful. He just left a comment that made Yuri very helpless, interrupted the radio, and led the troops to launch the final charge. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 808. Rush. Kill. Roar. As the general attack order was issued, this group of fierce Yuri troops immediately charged like wolves and tigers, destroying the defensive buildings at the intersection in a few breaths, and the army filed in. All the Allied guards encountered along the way were brutally wiped out by this torrent of steel, and even the buildings everywhere were pushed horizontally, leaving almost no trace of armor behind. This Allied base relies on the power of giant cannons to vigorously develop defense capabilities. In the past, Yuri's troops suffered heavy losses when attacking. But now this base lost half of its troops during the previous attack, and there was no time to replenish it. Later, Wang Ling led a large force to charge in, and also used laser UFO cards to cut off the power, and the resistance was sharply reduced. But in this severe situation, the Psychic Empire launched a psychic storm against them, destroying large-scale buildings in the base and controlling a group of troops to rebel. All kinds of unfavorable situations were gathered together, leaving the base intent on defending but unable to save itself. It could only watch these barbaric Yuri troops wreaking havoc in their own base, pushing down buildings one after another and wiping out the defenders one after another. Military. Well. Looking at this chaotic situation, the Allied base commander sighed dejectedly, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. Next to him, the deputy was almost crying, "General, we are finished. We can't stop them at all." "I know," the commander said feebly, "from the moment the lightning storm failed to kill Wang Ling, we have already lost. Now, it is just a pointless resistance, it is meaningless. However, General Bob is really cruel, he gave up on us when he said he would give up." "Oh, that's it, that's it." As he spoke, the commander's finger reached for the self-destruct button on the control panel. He took one last look at the familiar command post and pressed it hard. Boom. 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 With this press, the entire base was equivalent to surrendering. All the buildings that Yuri's troops had not yet knocked down exploded in just a few seconds, leaving only a few sporadic guards behind. They were wiped out under the fierce firepower of Yuri's army. At this point, the two Allied bases were completely wiped out, and the Pingxi war zone, which was originally extremely stalemate, was captured by the Mind Empire in just a few days, completely ending the fighting in the entire war zone. Ha ha ha, okay. This battle was a blast. Hey, you were so strong before, why are you so soft now? We are not the same enemy at all. This is how we should fight? Ha ha ha. 1, ha ha. Oh oh. Dot. After having been locked in a stalemate for so long, now that the battle is finally over, this group of Yuri troops are extremely excited. All kinds of swear words, dirty words, and obscene words, mixed with cheers, resounded throughout the former Allied base site. Even the commander of Wang Ling's base witnessed the scene and sighed, "Tisk tisk. I never thought that one person's combat power can actually turn the tide of the entire war. We had a stalemate with the coalition and Allied forces before. No matter how long it takes, we still can't capture it. But Wang Ling has only been here for a few days, and he actually forced the coalition forces to retreat and destroyed them. Yuri. I might have been a little dissatisfied when I heard you say this before, but now, I can't be dissatisfied." Similar conversations were going on at the other two Yuri bases. Wang Ling was the biggest contributor to the conquest of the Pingxi war zone. For this, no matter how arrogant they were, they had to be convinced. However, as the biggest hero, Wang Ling did not have such deep feelings about this battle. While others were cheering, he was carrying a rifle with a rather arrogant expression, "Self-destruct. Humph, although it is unpleasant, but compared to the turtle commander from the last Allied base, he is still a man. Wang Ling, you did a great job in this battle." As soon as he finished speaking, the voice of Yuri's clone came over the radio. But Wang Ling didn't take it seriously. "Tisk, what a big deal it is. It's just two Allied army foundations. Is it worthy of congratulations?" Are you so happy? Ha ha ha, okay. It seems that just 2 allied bases are far from satisfying your appetite. Then I am here to wish you better results in advance. Yuri was not surprised by Wang Ling's temper. After congratulating him casually, he cut off the radio and urged the 3 major bases in the Pingxi theater to start taking action. After receiving the urging order, the 3 Yuri bases immediately began to take action. They dismantled the buildings in the base on a large scale, leaving only the command post, which was retracted into the form of a base vehicle. With the remaining troops in the base, they began a large-scale migrate. The target of the Mind Empire was not the Pingxi war zone. It was only when they happened to bump into the Allied base during the march that they had to start the stalemate encounter. Their target from the beginning was actually the Pingxi urban area behind the Pingxi war zone. Now that all the enemy forces have been eliminated, it is finally time to complete the mission. The main city of Pingxi City is a large city that is not inferior to Maidnu City in scale. There are high-rise buildings everywhere in the city, and several major functional areas are evenly distributed within the city. From a bird's-eye view, you can see how many of these the city once was prosperous. However, with the advent of the war, the main city of Pingxi was also greatly affected. During the battle in the field, the logistics personnel of the 2 armies were also urgently evacuating the residents in the city. However, this evacuation was not complete, and a large number of ordinary citizens were still left in the city. However, the total number is less than 1/10 of Maidnu City, and it feels somewhat sparse. This group of ordinary citizens had no ability to resist at all when faced with the fierce Yuri troops. As a result, the troops acted extremely brutally. After entering the city, they plundered everywhere and even beat and scolded ordinary civilians to vent their anger. Wang Ling was very unhappy with these behaviors, but he did not stop them. He just followed the team with an ugly expression and watched coldly. However, the brutality of this group of troops did not subside because of Wang Ling's tolerance. Instead, it intensified. When they met 2 women running away on the street, they actually caught them and pushed them to the ground, preparing to vent their animal desires. But oh! They couldn't even take out the weapons, but Wang Ling suddenly opened fire, shooting accurately from a long distance, killing the 2 Yuri recruits. Who? This situation frightened these Yuri troops so much that they shuddered subconsciously, and some of them even looked towards the source of the gunfire with anger. However, after seeing that the shooter was Wang Ling, he suddenly became silent. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 809. If the shooter had been someone else, these frustrated Yuri troops might have taken action, but here at Wang Ling, they really didn't dare. After all, Wang Ling's terrifying combat prowess is real. To protest against this murderous god is not to seek death, right? Wang Ling. What are you doing? Those are our own troops, why did you kill them? However, one of the commanders of the 3 bases couldn't stand it and questioned Wang Ling. However, Wang Ling's expression was very cold and indifferent. He shouldered his rifle and spat, "It's nothing. I just see that they are unhappy. You are so presumptuous. If you don't like it, it's our own troops. You can't point your guns at them," another commander also agreed and scolded Wang Ling. But Wang Ling didn't care about the majesty of their commander at all. He even stared back and cursed, "Bullshit. Who are you yelling at? If you dare to say anything nonsense to me again, believe it or not, I will kill you immediately." The 2 commanders suddenly became silent. They had never been in contact with Wang Ling before, and they didn't understand Wang Ling at all, and they didn't know Wang Ling's brutality and domineering nature. However, Wang Ling's powerful combat effectiveness in annihilating the Allied troops and attacking the Allied base shocked them all. Faced with Wang Ling's threat, the dignified Yuri base commander actually dared to "I dare not speak when I am angry." The other commander, who had known Wang Ling to some extent before, did not try to show off, but he was inevitably a little dissatisfied with Wang Ling's approach, so he complained quietly to Yuri X on the side, "Wang Ling is it too much to do? But Yuri, I don't want to get myself into this trouble." As for Wang Ling, he stopped the two complaining commanders, then clapped his hands and announced to the entire army, "Everyone, please listen to me. Don't let similar things appear in front of me again. Otherwise, I will kill you." Under such coercion, all the infantrymen had strange expressions on their faces. Some were frightened, others were annoyed, and some were even confused. However, no matter what, not even the two commanders can do anything to Wang Ling. Who are they? No matter how angry I was, I could only hold it in when facing Wang Ling. After the interlude, the march continued. After being frightened and threatened by Wang Ling's iron-blooded methods, these Yuri troops became much more at ease during the next march. Not only did they no longer think about venting their animal desires, they even stopped beating and scolding ordinary civilians. The looting operations have also been restrained a lot, and the effect is almost immediate. Looking at the changes in the troops, Yuri. He was happy, but the Yuri infantrymen around him felt unhappy. "I am used to being indulgent on weekdays, but if I suddenly restrain myself, it will of course make me feel uncomfortable in every possible way." However, due to Wang Ling's pressure, no one dared to commit crimes. The main city of Pingxi is too large, and naturally large troops will not move to every corner of the city. As a result, the three Yuri bases chose 3 empty squares or streets to re-establish their bases and quickly restored their electronic power. Map. Later, laser UFOs and getter tanks were dispatched to quickly explore around the map, gradually presenting the entire city on the electronic map. After broadening our horizons, the next plan began to be implemented. In the center of the city is a medium-sized residential area, but during the previous evacuation operations, everyone had moved here and it became an empty building. As a result, Yuri's troops dispatched more than a dozen tanks and leveled the entire community. Then they dispatched a large number of engineers to repair the foundation and began to build a psychic beacon. As the ultimate device of the psychic empire, this psychic beacon can control everyone in an entire large city. It is so powerful that it makes people tremble. And with such a powerful function, it is naturally more time-consuming and labor-intensive to build. Looking at the busy engineering soldiers and checking the remaining civilians in the entire city through electronic video, Wang Ling couldn't help but wonder, the remaining civilians in the main city of Pingxi are relatively few. There is no need to be alone anymore. Build a psychic beacon for large-scale control. To this question, Yuri, there is no part of the plan that cannot be missed. Cut. Seeing that Yuri X didn't want to say more, Wang Ling didn't bother to ask. There are only some unarmed civilians left in the main city of Pingxi. Normally, Yuri's troops would burn incense if they didn't bully them. Naturally, it is impossible for them to harass Yuri's troops. Although the construction of the psychic beacon was slow, there was no disturbance. The entire project was carried out in an orderly manner, and it was finally completed successfully 2 days later. When the psychic beacon started operating, Wang Ling clearly felt a strange wave spreading, seemingly covering the entire main city in the blink of an eye. Under this strange fluctuation, the remaining ordinary people in the city, about 1/5 of them, slowly lost themselves, showing hazy eyes, and their whole people started to move like zombies. However, the other people were not controlled. They just looked around with frightened eyes, not knowing what was going on. Although the control range of the psychic beacon is large enough, it is not instantaneous control without distinction. It still requires a process of adjusting the frequency and power to gradually control the people in the city. There were already relatively few people left in the main city of Pingxi. This process did not last long. In less than a day, all the civilians entered a state of confusion and lost themselves. Wang Ling witnessed the scene with his own eyes and was now leaning against a mind control vehicle, frowning and feeling quite uncomfortable. Seeing his state, Yuri. Wang Ling didn't hide it. I was wondering, do they still have their own consciousness if they are controlled by the collective? What do I think is the problem? It turns out to be such a basic problem, Yuri. There is no thought or soul on it, it just looks muddled. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 810. Tisk, tisk. After hearing this, Wang Ling tilted his lips and joked, "Is this called consciousness? Look at them, they are all as confused as the walking dead. Rather than saying they are living people, I feel more like puppets. Yuri, their abilities are not qualified to be the same as yours, so they can retain their own personalities. The more confused they are, the safer they are." Tch, Wang Ling glanced at Yuri X, "You have such a strong desire to control that you even want to control people's behavior and personality." Ha ha ha. This statement made Yuri X burst into laughter. After Wang Ling glared at him strangely, "Yuri, it's also for the peace of the entire world. For world peace? Stop putting gold on your face. How do your war methods have anything to do with peace?" Wang Ling disagreed. "Yuri, it's just profit. In the final analysis, the world is in turmoil because people are causing trouble. Therefore, the world needs a purification, about the purification of people's hearts. If you want to achieve absolute peace, you need to firmly control all people's hearts. And in the process of purification, war methods are inevitable, and the whole process will inevitably be painful and not understood by others." After hearing this, Wang Ling glanced at the ignorant civilians in the electronic video and couldn't help but sneered, "So you attack civilians? It's high sounding. Haha, we have heard this kind of thing a lot. If you don't understand, it doesn't matter, but the plan still has to be implemented. Once our plan is completed and we control the entire world, we will restore order to the world." Yuri X smiled, very confidently. However, his thinking was almost crazy, and Wang Ling really couldn't agree with it. However, since he was in the Soul Empire after all, Wang Ling didn't comment too much. He rolled his eyes and calmed down. Now, the Pingxi war zone has been conquered, and the psychic beacon has been successfully built in the main city of Pingxi. The battle in this war zone has come to an end. In order to protect the psychic beacon, the three major bases have built a large number of defensive buildings around the community overnight. It will be even more stringent when traveling to New City. However, at this stage, Wang Ling didn't care at all. He was only responsible for attacking the city and defeating the enemy. While others were building various defensive buildings, he slept soundly until dawn. When I woke up the next day, after breakfast, another instruction from Yuri's clone came over the radio, ordering Wang Ling and Yuri X to continue moving to the war zone and fight elsewhere. This spiritual empire, in order to control Wang Ling, spent a lot of manpower, material resources, and energy. After successfully controlling it, it really saved them a lot of worry. In the next period of time, Wang Ling will fight in various war zones one after another, and there will be wars almost everywhere. If there is a stalemate, Wang Ling will be sent somewhere. However, Wang Ling alone has such a powerful combat power that can turn the world around. For example, in the Pingxi war zone, the enemy could not be attacked for a long time and was extremely stalemate. However, with the arrival of Wang Ling, progress was quickly made. Under Wang Ling's threat, the Mind Empire successively conquered many war zones and took the opportunity to build a large number of psychic beacons, which gave the Mind Empire's ambition a shot in the arm. Yuri. Of course, Wang Ling is very powerful, and has even achieved great fame within the Soul Empire, but his successive sieges and defeats of enemies and the pacification of major war zones are all somewhat flawed. Because the coalition forces were always unwilling to fight with him, whenever Wang Ling arrived at a battlefield, the coalition base would retreat. The coalition and allied forces were able to hold down the Seoul Empire in a combined state. However, the coalition suddenly retreated, and the Seoul Empire had Wang Ling's help. The result can be imagined. During the attack, Wang Ling always kept his promise and would not attack if the coalition forces retreated. As a result, after the fighting in several theaters, the Allied forces were no longer happy and used this as an excuse to question the coalition forces. However, the Allied forces always responded with the excuse that they were unwilling to engage in firefights with Wang Ling. The Allied forces were furious, but unable to refute. Because of Wang Ling's incident, although the two armies have restored communication with each other after the Cold War, it is difficult to reconcile. The gap between the two major forces has become very serious. During Wang Ling's campaign in various theaters, the agreed time for the second exchange of arms technology between the two armies had arrived. However, at the urging of the Allies, the coalition said, if Wang Ling is not rescued, the arms technology cannot be exchanged. Rejected. Although the Allies were furious, who made them right? The coalition forces wanted to catch Wang Ling to death. They couldn't do anything about the coalition forces. In the first military technology exchange, the Allies exchanged Phantom tanks and Navy SEALs. Now these two arms have been completely integrated within the coalition, enhancing the coalition's combat effectiveness and defense. However, the coalition only exchanged the terror. Robots have very limited use in combat. For this reason, the Allies have always felt that they have suffered a big loss, and have been thinking that through the second arms technology exchange, they can obtain the technology of the Allied Kirov airship to make up for this loss. However, the attitude of the coalition forces made them dumb and unable to tell the story of their suffering. Of course, Wang Ling's war zone has successively attacked the city and defeated the enemy, but the situation in other war zones is not too optimistic for the Seoul Empire. Starting from the Made New Town war zone, General Lee Wiki's base gradually went berserk after Wang Ling withdrew. Instead of abandoning Made New Town, he teamed up with Agent Tanya to launch a fierce air offensive and forcibly destroyed the base. The spiritual beacon in the center of the city was detected, and then the army conquered, sweeping all the Yuri troops in the entire city in an almost barbaric manner, and successfully regained Mad New City. However, they did not stay in this sad place for long. After the guarding troops arrived, they continued to fight elsewhere. Although Wang Ling is gone, the fighting style he left behind has been imprinted in the mind of General Lee Wiki, and has also affected the entire Wolf Group and even the Eagle Group. In addition, Wang Ling's passage through the system has really strengthened a group of subordinates, including ace-level magnetic blast infantry, have extremely powerful firepower. Even without Wang Ling's command, they can still cause great trouble to Yuri's base through their tricky tactics. During Wang Ling's campaign, General Lee Wiki also commanded the troops, carrying out almost retaliatory attacks and conquering many theaters one after another. Taken together, the wars in various major war zones between the two sides are really confusing. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 811. The war has reached this stage, and the attacks between the two sides have become increasingly cruel. On the one hand, the Mind Empire relied on Wang Ling's combat power to quickly conquer major war zones and annihilate countless Allied troops. As for the coalition and Allied forces, represented by the General Lee Wiki base and the Tanya Agent base, they also carried out retaliatory operations and pacified many war zones one after another. The offense and defense between the two sides is like playing Tai Chi. Wang Ling didn't care about this, but the higher UPS of the Mind Empire, such as Yuri two major bases. However, this order caused a strong backlash from Wang Ling. He cursed the Yuri clone on the radio and put the muzzle directly on Yuri X's head. His fierce appearance really frightened them. Light. Although they were very angry about Wang Ling's disobedience, they still needed to rely on Wang Ling's combat power to restrain the coalition and allied forces and quickly conquer the major war zones. At the moment, they could only endure this anger. Realizing that it was impossible for Wang Ling to attack these two crazy revenge bases, the Yuri clones simply increased the utilization of Wang Ling, speeding up the attack and transfer of battles in various theaters, trying to Wang Ling's firepower reached its limit. Wang Ling, on the other hand, was not that resistant to the order to fight. As long as it did not violate his bottom line, these were within the acceptable range. As a result, Wang Ling continued to engage in high-intensity battles for a long time. War zones were conquered one after another, and psychic beacons were built one after another, greatly accelerating the ambition of the psychic empire to control the world. During this process, Wang Ling has always followed his promise. Whenever the coalition base retreats, he will not attack. There have not been many direct battles with the coalition base. Of course, this is not absolute. The forest is big and there are all kinds of birds, and not all coalition forces are willing to retreat. During these days, 2 new generals were promoted from the rank of colonel to officers and commanders. They were arrogant, did not understand Wang Ling, and were eager for quick success. When faced with the threat of Wang Ling, they did not retreat. Instead commanded the troops to launch an attack. As for Wang Ling, although he was once a member of the Allied forces and always cherished his old friendship and did not overly embarrass the Allied forces, this old relationship is not endless. Since the 2 coalition bases were not given face, Wang Ling showed no mercy to them and personally annihilated all the attacking troops. Moreover, before attacking the coalition base, he took the lead in leading heavy troops to kill the 2 coalition bases. Previously, Wang Ling had been avoiding fighting with the Allied forces, which also made the Allied forces extremely dissatisfied. Even within the Seoul Empire, there was quite a bit of criticism about this matter. But this battle immediately blocked the minds of the Seoul Empire and the Allied forces. Wang Ling also has a bottom line when it comes to treating the coalition forces. As for the coalition forces, after witnessing the destruction of the 2 bases in the electronic video, PoortoRich just sighed and said nothing on the surface, but in fact, he was very shaken in his heart. The goal of the Seoul Empire is to control the world, and the coalition forces will also be the target of its attack or even control. They didn't want to fight Wang Ling, but now that Wang Ling was already a member of the Seoul Empire camp, it would be difficult to rescue him in a short time. They were indeed preserving their feelings by retreating to avoid the war, but the nature of this war also forced them to join the war. If Wang Ling was allowed to help Yuri's base attack, the world would be in danger. Alas, the problem was before us, and even PoortoRich felt doubly embarrassed. Why bother? We have said that there will be no fight if we retreat, so why are you causing this trouble for yourself? In fact, it was not only the coalition forces that were in trouble, but Wang Ling too. The character he retained also made him very nostalgic. He really did not want to attack the coalition forces, but these 2 bases did not give them any face. How could Wang Ling tolerate them in the Seoul Empire? After destroying the 2 coalition bases, Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh. Haha, good job, Wang Ling. However, Yuri tolerance is just a woman's kindness. Through this battle, I hope you can truly formalize your identity. Shut up. However, Wang Ling was very disgusted with his words, so he yelled directly on the radio, "Do I need you to tell me what I want to do?" Yuri. After stopping Yuri, well, tomorrow will be the end of you. Let's go back and have a night's rest, and start the general attack tomorrow. Oh! A group of Yuri infantry shouted loudly, and then the entire army began to retreat. After all, he has fought in too many war zones and had too many experiences of winning battles. Wang Ling did not pay attention to the only remaining Allied base in the war zone. With tomorrow's general attack, the entire war zone will also be destroyed. Successfully conquered. Of course, this is just Wang Ling's habitual thinking. In fact, during these days, the Allies have been discussing a plan to kill Wang Ling. And this plan has now taken shape, and it has been quietly deployed inside the only remaining Allied base, relying on the shielding of the crack generator. However, because Wang Ling had so many glorious achievements, he did not take this base seriously and did not notice these conspiracies at all. That night, after dinner, when he was wandering alone, the Allied forces finally got started. Swish. When Wang Ling was walking in a wide and uninhabited area, a large area of supertemporal fluctuation suddenly appeared around him. Damn! Time teleportation. How could Wang Ling not recognize this thing? When he was controlled by the Mind Empire, it was thanks to this thing that he was now very sensitive to the fluctuations of time and space teleportation. Upon noticing this fluctuation, Wang Ling immediately became vigilant and hurriedly jumped towards the surrounding safe area. But swish swish swish. Since the Allies have set up a trap, how can they allow Wang Ling to escape smoothly? As soon as he took off, the time and space teleportation was activated, and Wang Ling disappeared under the time and space teleportation in an instant. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 812. Ah! 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 In a pale space, Wang Ling was alone in it, convulsing all over and letting out piercing screams one after another. Here is the transit space under time and space teleportation. In the eyes of outsiders, the Allied superweapon time and space teleportation seems to arrive at the destination instantly, but in fact, there is still a teleportation process in the middle, but ordinary infantry simply cannot enjoy this treatment. However, Wang Ling can, and this is not the first time. However, no matter how many times, the powerful field of time and space teleportation will always exist. In this space, Wang Ling is suffering from the tearing pain almost all the time. Called Lian Lian. Damn it! After the screams continued for a while, they gradually disappeared. After a series of painful groans, Wang Ling actually let out a yell in this pale space. Damn it! These bastards from the Allies and Allies. They actually dare to use chrono teleportation on me. Aren't you afraid of breaking your own teeth? The last time he was forcibly pulled into the time and space teleportation, although Wang Ling survived, he could only passively endure the torture during the teleportation. But after that torture, Wang Ling was greatly strengthened both physically and mentally, and he gradually adapted to the intense field. The second time he was forcefully dragged in and tortured, he actually regained consciousness. Of course, that intense field was still tearing his body apart, causing the appearance of his body to gradually crack like ceramic cracks. However, compared to the last time, the situation was much gentler. Wang Ling gritted his teeth and tensed his muscles. After adapting, the pain of the tearing became less and less. As the pain eased to a certain extent, Wang Ling took 2 hard breaths and gradually stood up from a half-kneeling position. This is the second time. Allied forces, your grandmas. After scolding the Allies, Wang Ling gradually regained his composure. With a strong desire to survive, lightning flashed in his mind as he thought about this matter. The first time the Allies plotted against me, they thought that the field of time and space teleportation would be enough to tear me apart, and teleporting me to Uri X was just for insurance. This second time, the Allies should not be so they naively thought they could kill me with this. If they want to kill me, they can only set up a trap at the end of the teleportation. But, what kind of trap will it be? Although he was controlled, this did not affect Wang Ling's mind. After calming down, he almost immediately guessed the purpose and method of the Allied forces. However, at the Allied base, crack generators were always used to shield the electronic video images. Wang Ling had no idea what the trap was. Damn it! Allies, just wait for me. This matter is not over yet. As long as you don't kill me, you will die." After thinking for a while, Wang Ling couldn't think of a result, so he simply stopped thinking about it and gritted his teeth. Yagwan, while enduring the torture, was also silently cursing the allies. In this pale hyperspace space, there is no specific concept of time. The outside world notices that the hyperspace movement only lasts a moment, but here, time is relatively longer. But for how long, under the pain, Wang Ling had no idea. "I just feel that after persisting for a while, this pale space finally has a little fluctuation." Wang Ling, who had experienced passive teleportation before, immediately knew that this was a sign of reaching the end point, so he immediately braced himself and observed his surroundings. When it fluctuated, the space did not completely dissipate for a while, but the appearance of the endpoint gradually emerged in the surroundings. With the help of this, Wang Ling finally observed the Allied forces' trap. In order to kill Wang Ling, the lineup of this trap is really luxurious. On all sides of Wang Ling, there are 8 seals, waiting with submachine guns. And beside the seals, there were 6 other phantom tanks. Behind the seals and phantom tanks, hundreds of Allied soldiers were surrounded on 3 levels inside and 3 outside. Behind the Allied soldiers, there were even 3 light prism towers built in a triangle shape. As if afraid that Wang Ling would escape, there were more than 10 terrifying robots surrounding the light prism tower. Good guy, these, whether they are any type of troops or light prism towers, are enough to kill ordinary infantry in an instant. However, in order to kill Wang Ling this time, the Allies actually gathered all these troops together. With this kind of lineup, I'm afraid even the gods won't be able to escape. Snort. In the blink of an eye, he saw the entire lineup clearly, and Wang Ling was also angry. However, no matter how angry he was, the dead end was over and Wang Ling had to face it. It was not Wang Ling's character to die peacefully. In the gap when the pale space faded, Wang Ling's mind flashed with lightning, and he had already thought of a way to escape. However, this road is also a narrow escape, and he needs to fight to the death. Swish. Just as this plan emerged, the pale space finally reached the moment when it was about to disappear. However, this time still needed a second or two. During this time, the Allies could not take action. However, Wang Ling can. For a second or two, any other person would be unable to do anything but wait for death, but in Wang Ling's case, it was enough to save his life. Seizing this short golden time, Wang Ling hurriedly picked up his rifle and used a rate of fire that was almost faster than a Gatling gun. He shot and killed 8 seals around him in the blink of an eye, and then took advantage of the remaining time to shoot in succession. Destroyed 4 phantom tanks and cleared out all the Allied soldiers blocking the road in one direction. A large number of Allied troops were shot and killed, and all of this was only completed in these extremely limited 2 seconds. After the miscellaneous soldiers on the escape route were cleared, the pale space of the time and space teleportation completely disappeared, and Wang Ling was nakedly exposed in front of the heavy Allied troops. A group of Allied troops were startled by Wang Ling's appearance, but they were not slow at all and opened fire immediately. Even the light prism tower condensed powerful light prism rays, trying to kill this huge threat as soon as possible. However, Wang Ling did not wait to be shot by them. After regaining his mobility, he immediately ran towards the cleared direction and almost immediately ran out of the fire circle of a group of infantry and 2 light prism towers. However, the remaining 2 phantom tanks and the last light prism tower in the target direction focused their fire directly on Wang Ling. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 813. Tweet. Swish. Ah. 2 phantom tank shells and a ray from the luminous prism were focused on Wang Ling's body. The destructive power was so powerful that even with Wang Ling's physical strength, he couldn't help but let out a hysterical scream. If these two types of arms and buildings are attacked alone, they can kill ordinary infantry in an instant. But if two artillery shells and a firing line are concentrated on an infantry, there will be no way to survive. However, Wang Ling is not an ordinary infantryman. His body has been strengthened by intermediate levels and a large amount of military experience. It has now reached a rather abnormal level. 3 major fatal attacks fell on him, and he screamed while, but only severely injured him and did not die immediately. If calculated according to the blood bar in the red alert world, the blood bar above Wang Ling's head would have been mostly empty in an instant. In his current state, he would never be able to withstand another round of concentrated fire. Knowing his situation, Wang Ling really didn't dare to stay. He endured the tearing torture and rushed forward, almost immediately breaking out of the fire circle of the 2 phantom tanks. At this time, the only thing that could pose a fatal threat to him was the light prism tower in front of him that was gathering energy. And Wang Ling was not polite. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a king-level SEAL team. When he arrived in front of the light prism tower, he immediately planted a bomb and blew it up before the second light prism ray of the light prism tower was emitted. Gada gada! Gada gada! Seeing that Wang Ling was unexpectedly difficult to deal with, he blew up the light prism tower and was about to break out of the encirclement. The 10 terrifying robots standing by outside could not wait any longer and quickly approached from all sides, trying to kill Wang Ling. However, the armor of this terrifying robot was even more fragile than a multifunctional infantry vehicle. Wang Ling just glanced at it and transformed into an elite combat soldier in the blink of an eye. With just 1 round of strafing, 10 terrifying robots all burst. Now, Wang Ling has broken out of this direct encirclement, but he is not safe now because he is still in the Allied base. After hurriedly taking a look at the electronic video, Wang Ling discovered that he had not left the original war zone. The traps laid by the Allied forces were also based on the principle of proximity and were laid behind the Allied base on this battlefield. After all, he was located behind the Allied base. Even if he broke out of the trap, he would still be surrounded by Allied troops. Fortunately, there are no light prism towers that directly threaten him in the surrounding area where Wang Ling is currently, so the Allies cannot kill him for a while. Taking advantage of this convenience, Wang Ling did not run away immediately. Instead, he held up his injured body and started shooting in all directions. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Boom. Boom. Oh. Oh ho. The 2 missing phantom tanks exploded in response, and subsequently the Allied soldiers involved in the siege died tragically in pieces, almost all of them perishing in less than a breath. After that, came the other troops from the Allied base. More than a dozen multi-purpose infantry vehicles tried to rush over at high speed and kill Wang Ling, but they were forcibly blown up by Wang Ling halfway. Later, there were more than 10 Grizzly tanks, dozens of Allied infantry, and 6 remote-controlled tanks. The Allies designed Wang Ling and even used time and space teleportation to forcibly move him to their own base and place him in a trap. But unexpectedly, Wang Ling actually broke the encirclement by force, and even tried his best to block the Allied troops after rushing out, causing heavy losses to the entire base. The Allies really shot themselves in the foot this time. However, now that the calculation has begun and even super weapons have been used, the Allies will not give up so easily. On the other side of the base, there were 6 Prism tanks, accompanied by more than 20 Grizzly tanks, rushing towards Wang Ling in a menacing manner. Humph, sir. When this batch of tanks rushed into Wang Ling's observation range, Wang Ling had to stop firing and look for a retreat route. There was no way, just these 20 or so Grizzly tanks, without a sufficient safe distance, it would be difficult for Wang Ling to destroy them all at once, not to mention there were also light prism tanks behind them. Inch longer and stronger, the range of the prism tank is still higher than that of Wang Ling. Facing 6 prism tanks, Wang Ling has no ability to resist. If he stays here, he can only wait for death. Under observation, Wang Ling quickly discovered a weak defense point behind the Allied base. There were only 2 machine gun bunkers and more than a dozen Allied soldiers and major troops stationed there. You are the one. After confirming the route, Wang Ling immediately ran over, opened fire halfway, and killed the group of infantry guards in the blink of an eye, then transformed into a SEAL team and charged quickly. When he rushed into the fire circle of the machine gun bunker, the 2 machine gun bunkers also opened fire, focusing the fire on Wang Ling. However, Wang Ling could only resist forcefully and quickly approached, blowing up 2 bunkers and blasting open the weak defense line behind the Allied base. Of course, Wang Ling didn't feel good either. He was injured himself and was set on fire by the machine gun bunker. Now his injuries were a bit more serious. The blood was almost soaked through his underwear, and even a little blood stains appeared on his outer clothes. But Wang Ling didn't care about this at all. After blowing up the bunker, he got out of the Allied base, found a safe route in the electronic video, made a big arc, crossed the Allied base, and tried to return to Yuri's base. Buzzing. Wang Ling ran at full speed, even faster than a grizzly tank, but no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than the Air Force. When he was escaping, 8 Black Hawk fighter jets were chasing him from behind. Good guy, if these 8 Black Hawk fighter jets all dropped their bombs, one round of bombardment would be able to blow up even a command post. Now that the Allies have dispatched such a luxurious lineup just to kill Wang Ling, they really think highly of him. Hateful. Hearing the roar of the plane, Wang Ling immediately observed the 8 fighters and gritted his teeth in anger. However, just as he was cursing, the 8 Black Hawk fighter jets had already dropped missiles one after another. A total of 8 missiles, with murderous intent, were aimed at Wang Ling, drawing death arcs in the air and falling towards Wang Ling one after another. These 8 missiles are indeed powerful enough to destroy a command post instantly. However, the command post is a building after all and cannot move at all when it is bombed. But Wang Ling can move. Observing that the missiles were approaching, Wang Ling gritted his teeth and stopped moving forward. Instead, he quickly rolled and jumped to the side. As a result, all 8 missiles missed, and none of them could successfully hit Wang Ling. There is no other way. No matter how powerful the Black Hawk fighter is, it can only carry 1 missile in this game world and shoot them all empty. Even if you are unwilling to do so, you can only go back the way you came. Humph, if you want to blow me up, you have to practice your aim again. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 814. My Wu. In the real world, Xiaohe was squatting in front of Wang Ling's bed, wagging his tail and tilting his head slightly, with a puzzled look in his eyes. Now, Wang Ling has been lost in the world of Red Alert for more than a month, but in reality, it has only been 3 or 4 days. 4 days is not too long, but during these nearly 4 days, Wang Ling has always been lying in bed and never woke up. Although Xiaohe has gradually opened up his spiritual intelligence, he has not opened it to the point where he can understand Wang Ling's current state. In the past few days, this guy has been feeling that something is wrong, but after several tests, Wang Ling has always shown signs of life, that is, no further action was taken. Although Wang Ling did not return for nearly 4 days, the dormitory was very clean. After all, Xiaohe had been cleaning it all the time. Moreover, there is enough food and water for Xiaohe in the dormitory. With Xiaohe's cleverness, there is no problem in surviving. In the past few days, Xiaohe would often squat in front of Wang Ling's bed and stare at Wang Ling. Although he had no worries about eating and drinking, Wang Ling never woke up or stayed with him. He felt a little lonely and aggrieved. Every time he looked at Wang Ling, it seemed as if Wang Ling would wake up in the next moment. But it has been going on for so long, but Wang Ling still shows no sign of waking up, and Xiao He is also confused. In the past few days, Lily, Lao Shui, and others knocked on the door several times, but Wang Ling didn't wake up, and Xiao He didn't dare to open the door, so he kept waiting alone. Today was no exception. After eating and drinking, the dormitory was cleaned again. Xiao He continued to squat in front of Wang Ling's bed, looking at him with confusion and expectation. I don't know how long I had been watching, but Wang Ling on the bed suddenly trembled for several seconds. Xiao He was instantly startled. He quickly stood up and put his nose next to Wang Ling's face and rubbed it. But instead of Wang Ling waking up, Xiao He smelled a faint smell of blood. My woo! A few nights ago, Xiao He had seen Wang Ling in this state. Now, again, Xiao He was extremely confused and didn't know what was going on. But before it could decide what to do, Wang Ling's body trembled violently again. This tremor was more intense than the last time, and after the tremor, a more pungent smell of blood almost hit my face. This frightened Xiao He. Even though he didn't know what state Wang Ling was in, he also knew that Wang Ling was definitely in danger now, so he ran around in the dormitory anxiously. After being anxious, Xiao He finally had an idea, so he quickly came to the dormitory door, stood up, opened the dormitory door, and walked directly to the opposite dormitory door, and slapped the dormitory door with two paws quickly. Superior. Boom. Xiao He has also been strengthened by the intermediate level of the different dimensional system. His body is not generally strong. The dormitory door opposite originally had a dormitory door inserted inside, but Xiao He's shot not only opened the door bolt, but also opened the door bolt. Even the door shaft was broken, and the whole door fell straight down. Boom. Ah! As luck would have it, there happened to be a person in the dormitory opposite the door, sitting in front of the door eating snacks, and the door hit him squarely on the head. Fortunately, the dormitory door is hollow inside, with only two thin layers of wood, otherwise this guy would really be in trouble. But even so, the blow stunned him, causing him to scream in terror. His legs jumped up as if they were on springs, and the dormitory door bounced aside. The number of students who did not go to the internship organized by the school was not too small, and there were 3 people in this dormitory who did not go. They were still in the dormitory at this time. The door was broken, and the other 2 were also shocked. But when they hurriedly looked at the door of the dormitory, they found that it was Xiao He banging on the door, which confused them. Xiao He. Holy shit, Xia He, what are you doing? They had met Xiao He quite a few times and even played together, so of course they knew about it. Woof woof. Although Xiao He was smart, he couldn't speak human language after all. He yelled twice anxiously, then stepped forward and bit someone's trouser leg, and pulled it out. Hey, what are you doing? The person who was bitten on his trouser leg was really shocked, but after all, he knew Xiao He and knew that it would not bite people randomly, so he did not resist too much and followed Xiao He into Wang Ling's dormitory. Oh! Why is there such a strong smell of blood? What? Ha! Wang Ling. After all, the smell of blood emanating from Wang Ling's body was too strong. Not only Xiao He, but also the other 3 people could smell it. Realizing that something had happened to Wang Ling, they quickly lifted Wang Ling's quilt, but were caught in front of them. The scene startled him. Wang Ling only wore thin pajamas when he slept a few days ago, but now, the pajamas were soaked and stained red with blood, which looked particularly eye-catching. Let me choke you, what's wrong with Wang Ling? Did he commit suicide? Why is there so much blood? Don't be stunned, call the emergency number and take him to the hospital. The 3 of them were anxious for a while, and then they quickly got busy. One person made an emergency call, while the other 2 worked together to lift Wang Ling up and move him out carefully. Such injuries were naturally caused by time and space teleportation in the Red Alert world, as well as by phantom tanks, light prism towers and machine gun bunkers. The injuries left behind in the red alert world were also brought to the real world. Wang Ling himself is not dead, and his body also has a certain self-healing function. If you give him some time, he can always recover. But the three of them didn't know that when they saw Wang Ling covered in blood, they were frightened and rushed to the hospital and the emergency room in a hurry. Of course, Wang Ling himself didn't know all this. After being controlled, he didn't even have the concept of returning to the real world. While Xiao He and three others rushed to rescue him, Wang Ling happened to shoot down 8 Black Hawk fighter jets in the red alert world and taunted the Allied base. Now that Wang Ling has rushed out of the Allied base, it is relatively safer. However, the Allied forces obviously did not give up chasing him. According to the electronic video, the 6 Prism tanks and a group of Grizzly tanks had rushed out of the base and chased Wang Ling. Shortly afterwards, there even appeared in the air. More than 20 rocket pilots rushed over collectively. Damn it, you still have to pay it forward. Seeing this, Wang Ling gritted his teeth and cursed, then turned around and continued running wildly. His speed, when fully released, was faster than a Grizzly tank, but the rocket troopers were faster than him. After escaping for a while, they caught up with Wang Ling from behind. "Grandma, if the tiger doesn't show its power, do you think I'm a sick cat? Rocket pilots, right? Now that they're here, leave them all for me."